All right, we're live on Facebook and we're live on YouTube. All right, great. I'll open in prayer. Yeshua, thank you for our time together. Thank you for the Torah. Thank you that you never changed, or rather that you're the same yesterday, today, and forever. Thank you that your ways don't change, and therefore your people aren't consumed. Thank you that you're Chapim, that you're slow to anger. Help us to understand the Torah. Help us to understand laws that have so little to do in the high context situation of our incredible opulence and wealth. Give us humility. Help us to understand these ancient ways and your ancient people, and help us to see them as our fathers that pass through the cloud, like Paul wrote. I just ask, Lord, for us to be edified through this. I ask for people to be edified. I ask for the body to be built up. You are faithful, Yeshua. And I pray that we'd understand your Torah. We love you. I love you, Yeshua, that you said that you came to fulfill the Torah and the prophets, not to abolish them.
Yes.
So these laws that people want to say are weird, well, then your ministry is weird to them. These laws that they want to cast away, then they want to cast away your ministry. And you came to bring these to fulfillment, to manifest them. Thank you for your people. Thank you for the Jewish people. I pray, Yeshua, that you would bless the Jewish people and that you draw them to yourself. I ask it in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay.
Burn your head.
Let's get started. That's great.
Because it matches with my shirt.
All right. I don't want to chide you in front of people. It doesn't match very well. All right.
Sure.
Okay. So we're going to start in verse 1. Go for it.
21:1.
21:1.
All right. And these are the regulations that you will set before them. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he will serve 6 years. And in the 7th, he will go out as free for nothing. If he comes in single, he will go out single. If he is the husband of a wife, his wife will go out with him. If his master gives him away, and she bears for him sons or daughters, the wife and her children will belong to her master, and the slave will go out single. But if the slave...
Okay. We're in 4. We'll try to stick with some ideas here. So these are mishpatim. These are judgments and rulings. They say regulations. It means these are the acts of justice, the rulings, almost like not rulings from the past, but these are rulings that are to be given in advance. It's like, here are the rulings that the judge is to hand down in this situation. In other words, God has ruled this is justice. This is what justice looks like within the Israelite context. Okay. Now, it's within an existing context. The circumstances of the case are not divinely created or demanded by God. All of these situations they already exist. The question is God says in the situational context that Israelites find themselves in, this is how I will demand that they navigate these contexts that they've had forever, basically, or very far back. He inherited a people, remember, all the way into the time of Joshua. Joshua says, our fathers worshipped the other gods in Egypt. As for me and my house, we will serve Yahweh. We know that they're going to worship the calf. They're not. This is a people with already, like, they already have basically a populated culture. They're not a blank state. So already we have this idea, here are rulings that you'll put in front of them. When you buy a Hebrew slave, basically God says, or Yahweh says, this is going to be different. You're not going to be able to treat a Hebrew slave the way you treat other slaves. Slavery already exists as an institution among ancient Semitic peoples. Actually, most ancient peoples had the concept of slavery, enslavement. It is the way they did life. So God has peculiar rules for them to navigate existing institutions. The question might rise up, why doesn't he just obliterate the institution? Just get rid of it. I think you're going to start to see, and I put this out there at the beginning of this because we're going to see a lot of really, really dark commands in this passage. And I just would warn people beforehand, if you want a taste of this, go read the book The Road by Cormac McCarthy. Go watch the series The Walking Dead or read the graphic novel The Walking Dead. Look into post-apocalyptic works. they're really helpful for you to understand what's it like when you don't have the food problem solved, you don't have the water problem solved, you don't have the infrastructure problem solved, you don't have the security problem solved, you don't have the electricity problem solved. How will humans arrange themselves in light of these problems? And it'll lay the groundwork for you to have a paradigm in place to place these laws in. These laws don't happen in a vacuum; they happen within that paradigm of all these complicated problems not being solved. And Yahweh doesn't just force the problems to be solved. And then you have the other piece, which I think hopefully this frames our understanding of all that's going to come in this chapter. Remember where I think it was last week's Torah reading, where we're not going to take them by the way of the Philistines.
Right.
We're not going to take them by the way of the Philistines.
Don't see war.
Yeah, Yahweh says, lest they see war and then change their mind on the way. So Yahweh's aware of the hardness of part of Israel. He's aware of their feebleness. He's aware of who they are as a people. And he makes decisions like this on how to instruct them and direct them already. If he were to just try to abolish the institution of slavery, you have two problems. One, his way of dealing with it is already peculiar to them and alien. He doesn't say there won't be slaves. He says, you'll all be my slaves. That's an interesting twist on it, okay? But that's easier to understand for them. That's an easier concept to understand, I think. And then the other side of it is, I think if he would try to abolish the institution of slavery, their hearts are hard. They would abandon him. And is this a novel idea? Is this an idea that doesn't occur in Scripture anywhere? The idea that God would give a law that's actually reflective of the hardness of somebody's heart. This comes up with laws like this. You're going to see some of the peculiar divorce laws or sending away laws that are in this chapter that's coming up. We're about to go through in the next few verses. This is the backdrop of Yeshua's own conversation when the Pharisees come to him and say, are we permitted to divorce? They're trying to set a trap for him. And he lays down a really hard stance on it. And they're basically like, well, if we can't, why are you complicating it? Why did Moses give us a certificate of divorce? And Yeshua does not say, oh crap, you're right. Or I don't care about the Torah. Or I have ways that are higher than the Torah. He doesn't say that. He just says, Moses gave you this law because of the hardness of your heart. Now what he does is he sets up a framework for interpreting the Torah. And that's a very interesting comment. Basically what it means is the law of writing the certificate of divorce that Moshe wrote down is not a reflection of the beautiful heart of the perfect God of Israel. It's a reflection of the hard heart of Israel. It's a reflection of the hard heart of the people. Okay, so this law, in a lot of its brutality, is a reflection of the people of Israel just as much as a reflection of Yahweh. You combine that with this Walking Dead post-apocalyptic motif, this ancient tribal landscape, this is how they lived, and suddenly you start to see, okay, this law, this Torah it was a very real reflection of ancient life. But by itself, it wasn't like God's like, I'm going to give the perfect treatise on moral ethics in Eden. That's not what the Torah is.
Right.
It's rooted in this brutal time, in these dark circumstances with a people that God isn't raping. God's not raping Israel. He's not basically robotically forcing them into a mold. He meets them where they are. He knows they have a hard heart. And it's a reflection of him interacting and deigning and condescending.
Okay. I have two questions.
Yeah.
So, is this kind of the idea that he won't allow us to be tempted past what we can handle?
Give me why do you think that? Or why is your mind going to that verse? Won't allow you to be tempted beyond what you can bear.
So if their heart is hard, right, and he would have taken them through the land of the Philistines, they would have been tempted to be afraid and run away, and run back.
I think the verse in Corinthians captures an aspect of God's heart that is being reflected in what you're talking about. But I think the new covenant promise of God not tempting us beyond what we can bear as actual vessels of His Holy Spirit and represent. I mean, I think
we're not allowing us to be tempted because He doesn't tempt.
Sure,
right? He's not. He wouldn't be.
Yeah, He's not the tempter. He's not the one tempting.
Yeah.
I mean, James says God doesn't tempt, nor can He be tempted.
Right.
So He, I think there's a relationship between what he's doing here and that verse in Corinthians. I think Corinthians is definitely way more amplified than this old covenant setup.
Okay, and then second question, is it okay? So the Torah is a reflection of the hardness of.
I hope we can be heard. I'm pretty sure we can be heard. Somebody, Craig, Chris, somebody.
You're speaking pretty low.
It's not that. It's the microphone. The microphone picks that up. I'm making sure that I just unplugged a cord.
The headphones.
Yeah, so I'm making sure it didn't mess anything up.
Yeah,
it should be good now.
Hopefully Craig would have said something.
Yeah.
Just watching their mouths
Exactly.
for 7 minutes. Then okay, so if it's being said that the Torah is a reflection of the hardness of the Israelites' hearts, is it like what does Yahweh add in to that? Is it a reflection of how he approaches?
Yes. It definitely would be.
The Israelites.
Thanks, Craig. That's awesome. Good, bro. Love that. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Is it? Well, you're right. The question then is, well, where does God show up in it? I'm not saying it's only a reflection of Israel's brutality, but it's like, well, what does it reveal about Yahweh? A lot of things it's going to reveal about Yahweh will depend on the law. This law is a great example. We'll start with this law. So he puts a spin on owning countrymen. That's not there's not really a concept of that in other countries, or you don't really have countries, but you don't have other peoples, other nations. Say they would own other nationals. Is a slave. Exactly. There's no distinction. But he says, I make a distinction. You're already doing the slavery thing, but I'm making a distinction with how you do the slavery thing with my people.
Because slave to master, the Israelites are Yahweh's people.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, all right, so then is it now? Because I don't know why, but I feel like it would be tricky to say like, since it is a reflection, some part of it is a reflection of the hardness of heart of Israel. Does that then, and this might be too meta, does that then affect how much, or well, I guess it would, but in regards to gleaming Yahweh's character in his heart out of these interactions, that makes an alteration, right? Like that affects what you glean about his heart. Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. Well, it's very high context. It's very easy to misread this. Yeah, it's opaque. Really high context. And we don't have to be embarrassed about that. This can be very opaque. Sometimes just a translation of a single word can spin and change how you understand what you're reading. And some of these some concepts we don't even have. So sometimes you have hapax legomenos, you have words that show up and it's the only time it's there, and we take our best stab at trying to understand the context because no one's doing this anymore. Like even Rabbinic Judaism, they didn't function. They did not function this way. In the times of Yeshua, Israel was not functioning this way. Right. This is, I mean, whole different world. Yeah, it's. I mean, here's a picture you have to imagine. Is we think, oh, these laws are so harsh, but these laws are actually really kind compared to a lot of gut reactions from ancient Semitic people. Here's one. So he comes in single. He'll go out single. If he's the husband of a wife, he'll go out with his wife with him. Why would they add that clause? If he's the husband of a wife, his wife will go out with him. Because women are treated as property, and it'd be a very simple concept for an ancient slave master to say, you transferred the woman to me. She's mine. You can go out free. Just like, and taking ownership of the husband, he also like sort of. So okay, but this might go, because all right, let's say that, and they use language that reflects this, I guess, but in the same line, right? He comes in single, and then the master gives him a wife. When he leaves, he can't leave with his wife and his kids. If he comes in with a wife and they produce children, he leaves with the wife and the kids. Watch this. Okay, imagine a discourse or a conversation. This is about justice. The word mishpat is justice, mishpatim, rulings, judgments. The judgments isn't really the right thing. It's basically saying give people their justice. What's their due? What's their obligation? Sure. So the next question is literally the opposite. If his master, verse 4, im Adonai yitin lo isha
If his master's woman or slave, okay, the master has a slave. It's his, in this context, it's his property. Whose property does the wife become? Now this is repulsive to modern people, but wives are deemed as part of what is given to a husband in the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually a discussion of property rights. That's dark.
Yeah.
But this is what the discussion is about, which is why the question is was the woman already the man's? I mean, even the language, if he comes in single, if he is the husband of a wife, verse 3, Im ba'al isha, ishahu, woman of him. If he's this word ba'al, you recognize that word?
Baal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a word that means master. It's the word for husband. It's also the word for lord or master, which is like Baal Zevu, the lord of flies, or different Baalim, the ones that they worshipped.
Mm-hmm.
Masters. So if he comes in, he's the master of a woman, but it's a peculiar word. It's not Adonai or Adon, rather. It's a word that has to do with it's a husband. It's translated husband and lord or ruler. Okay. If the wife is to him as the ruler, even though he becomes 6-year property for the man, his property remains intact. Is what the Torah is saying.
Right. So okay. So then this is the question, because I know this is about property rights. He's essentially so maybe he's just like, since you're going to do it, you got to do it this way.
Yes, this is the idea. The idea
so
is
they can't just be like killing each other.
They're already doing this.
Right. So then
God did not invent this practice.
Right. And nowhere does it say he did. He's just dealing with what's already happening, considering their heart. So then he comes in single. The master gives him a wife. He also teaches, let no man separate. Is that in? Or that doesn't come until the new covenant?
No, there is the idea. He hates
Genesis.
divorce. He hates divorce. There are grounds for, there are going to be grounds for divorce. But then
the cling that he says, like,
cling to each other,
right? Like leave the
father and mother
cling
to each other.
Yeah, because that would have already been here.
That's in the Torah. That's in Genesis.
Right. So, he upholds the master's property rights over that. Is he doing that? Because it seems like he's doing that.
In this instance, this is what the Torah. That's where the Torah lands.
I think there's a different way to put that, though.
Uh-huh.
I think he's upholding. So imagine you have two different men. One man has to become a slave, and the other man is a master with slaves. A woman will be better off with which of those two men?
Oh, there. Master with slaves.
So,
but is that's still like financial?
No, but what it comes down to, it actually proves something that a lot of Christians have been trying to fight against and don't realize it. Love is not the end-all be-all for whether or not to get married. Like, there are pragmatics.
You're going to see the pragmatics actually explored.
There are pragmatics of marriage.
Marriage is also, it's a property exchange too. So
it is
here,
but
everywhere
in the Torah.
Yeah, but what's happening is the woman is actually being considered. All right, there are at least two things that are happening. The woman does not become impoverished simply because she gets married to a slave, right?
She also can't choose to marry in this context, so that's a good point.
So the woman doesn't suddenly become like. Think of it this way: whose job would it be to give the woman her portion? Well, it's still the master's job to give the woman her portion.
Yeah, they don't make their own portions.
Which means her portion doesn't decrease just because she marries a slave, which is upholding another law in the Torah that says you don't decrease the portion, right? Because what matters more is this woman is taken care of by a man who can take care of her, not by who she's married to.
Yeah, there is going to be the rights given to a woman. Now that's an interesting point. In the Torah, they would not be the wife would not have the right to choose their. Now they could have that's not entirely true. It is slavery.
Well, Rebecca got to choose if she got married.
She's not a slave. I mean the slave woman. They would have some liquidity because. Yeah. For them, slaves doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be treated like a dog or something like this. But they're
like as simple as like a house servant.
But you're going to also see that some of it they can actually be treated quite terribly, and it's permissible. Well,
hold on. Lastly, one of the other things that this protects against is men who lie about things in order to steal another man's property. You see, a man could say, "Oh, let me become your slave," and already have a kind of backdoor deal with a woman. Hey, I'm going to become this slave. We're going to get married, and then I'm going to take you with me away from this guy. Right?
True.
So it protects against these kind of backdoor deals that could happen, which would ultimately be a type of theft.
I mean, it is possible that idea of a backdoor baked-in thing is there, but that to me seems like it's reading too much in that the concern is. I do think "don't steal" would be abstracted by them to the point to say we make sure that property doesn't unfairly transfer.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think your original point is actually well. Let's keep reading the context. There is actually some. Verse 10 is going to be interesting based on what we've talked about so far.
Okay. But if the slave explicitly says, "I love my master, my wife, and my children," I will not go out free.
Yeah.
His master will present him to God and bring him to the door or to the doorpost, and his master will pierce his ear with an awl, and he will serve him forever.
This is a fun phrase to read, by the way. V'higishu Adanav, he'll present him, his master, El HaElohim, v'higishu El Hadelet O El HaMezuzah. He actually puts him in front of the mezuzah. The mezuzah is the part of the door in the door frame where you'll put the Torah. You'll put a portion of the Torah from Deuteronomy 6. So he's going to present him to God there, which demonstrates to you that they would actually see that portion of their house as kind of sacred.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because the place that they would take the slave to present him to God would be the mezuzah. It's just an interesting little point.
Okay.
But let's talk about that for a second. This helps us think about the woman's predicament too. What if the woman says, "I like my master's house. I don't want to go out in that world." Now, I know this sounds dark, but if you've ever watched Walking Dead, think about how people who were bankers and accountants and dentists, they find themselves in a really brutal landscape, and they've clambered to the top, and then they find Negan's compound.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, Negan is absolutely brutal, but guess what? The world out there is worse.
Mm-hmm.
When you're faced with a choice, do you say, "I am Negan," right? Or do you say, "I'm just going to stand on my principles and then go out in the world and be destroyed by other people," this kind of thing. It's not to say that all masters are brutal like Negan, but it is to say that the world, I mean, it's so hard for us to keep this in front of our eyes. As soon as if we remove this from front of our eyes, we forget the rationale for so many of these laws. The world is brutal. The world is brutal at this time.
Oh, yeah, that actually.
The infant mortality rate is high. The starvation rate, it's absolutely possible. People die from wild beasts. They don't have secure gates. They don't have electricity. So at night, apex predators can come in. A really great place to stalk for lionesses is a village at night.
Yeah, right.
So they cluster together and they live because of strength in numbers. So it's actually conceivable that somebody says, "I don't want to go out there. And I love my master. I love this scenario. I'm serving him. I have no shame in it." Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know I'm an Israelite. This is the weird part. This is where the Torah kind of is different from other places, other ancient Semitic peoples. Every Israelite is peculiarly belongs to Yahweh. Okay. Let's see here. I love my master, my wife, my children. I will go out free. So he goes and he pierces his ear. Now it's funny because this is the word for to bore or pierce the ear is ratzah, which is also a word for will. It's a homophone, spelled different, but it's a homophone. It sounds exactly the same. That's why in Psalm 40, it says it's written about me in the scroll of the book. You've pierced my ear, or I've come here to do your will. You can't. It's hard for you to tell because he's saying it's a homophone. You'll see some people say you've opened my ear to try to make sense out of both of them. But that's picked up in Hebrews because Hebrews quotes Psalm 40 and says, "Burnt offering and sacrifice you did not require." It actually comes from that. The idea that the psalm would pull in that picture comes from this mishpat, from this regulation, from this judgment.
Oh, that's interesting. So you almost would have done it like double entendre, or with the idea of trying to use both or something.
Yeah. Now this, okay. Verse 7 is going to explain the scenario. Well, what about female Israelites?
Okay. And if a man sells his daughter as a slave woman, she will not go out as male slaves go out. If she does not please her master, who selected her, he will allow her to be redeemed. He has no authority to sell her to foreign people, since he has dealt treacherously with her.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like I'm missing a progression leap here. And if he selects her for his son, he shall do for her according to the regulations for daughters.
Mm-hmm.
If he takes for himself another, he will not reduce her food, her clothing, or her right of cohabitation.
Yeah.
And if he does not do for her these three, she shall go out for nothing. There will not be silver paid for her.
Yeah.
I don't think I understand it.
Okay. It's partly because of Hebrew's use of euphemism. The word here, a slave woman, is very ambiguous and unclear. But you can see with verse 10 the rights that are due her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The word isn't, there are a lot of words for slaves. The word used here is amah. It can mean maid or concubine. Okay. So if a man gives his daughter as an amah, which is a demoted kind of wife, in this ancient time, there are all kinds of arrangements. And basically, how do we exchange property based on classes and levels among each other? This is an arrangement that is an acceptable arrangement. I don't have as many of the crushing duties as a wife, but I also don't have the privileges.
Right.
Okay. But I do have the ability to produce males who can protect me and pass on my lineage and this kind of thing. Okay. So it's this weird, it seems to be talking about this weird scenario. If she doesn't please her master, if he becomes harmful in her eyes, which is really, it's entirely up to this master, which is functioning like a husband, is kind of what it's talking about. Then it says, he will allow her to be redeemed. She can be redeemed basically from her own people, typically, or kinsman redeemed. She can get out of this arrangement or scenario. It's like a kind of divorce, but it's a sub-divorce. Now, this also seems to cover not just sexual relationships. It could be different relationships as well, but it has sexual relationships in view. But it also makes sure that Israelites remain in Israel. He has no authority to sell her to a foreign people. She's still an Israelite. Mm-hmm. So we can't send her to the Canaanites.
So then in the dealing treacherously with her, that is him harming her or neglecting her?
It is.
Does the word neglect count?
It's possible that what verse is this?
8. Right where he's not allowed to sell her to foreign people since he has dealt treacherously with her. How?
It's some of this is this. Well, there's two scenarios. There are different scenarios. Both of them are a type of false promise or theft. One is she's not a wife, so she's this demoted status. This is a dark thing. You could do the opposite of what Joe was talking about, where instead of someone like, hey, let's marry you and I'll exchange property away from this guy as the master says, yeah, I'll give you this status, whatever, but then now I'm displeased and I'll send you away. Okay, but I want to try to make money on it. Well, I can't sell you to a foreign people. I can't. I have to allow you to be redeemed and brought back into a household in the village, for example, some other person. I have to allow that to happen. And there's two ways he could be dealing treacherously. You have a place to sleep, that kind of thing. I don't think so because of verse 10. I think this scenario is mainly talking about a man who takes a woman to sleep with her in a demoted status. That's what he means, dealt treacherously with her. It's deceptively. You'll be brought into my house, but I'm bored with you. And you'll not be brought in. Okay, you'll be cast out. This type of...
So kind of like making the promise, like, I'll add you to me, but then she gets there and he finds out, oh, you're just this, you're not.
Or any reason. The idea is evil in his eyes, but it's very easy to harmful. It's up to the discretion of him, and he can do it. He can do it for a sundry list of reasons, because he holds the power in that property exchange culturally. So the Torah says he dealt treacherously with her in that regard. Then it talks about another hypothetical. If he selects her for a son, he shall do it for her according to the regulations for daughters. This.
So as if she was his own daughter.
So exactly, which means she can't. This is interesting. It means so this also stops concubines from being shared and spread.
Mm-hmm.
She may come in as an ama or something like this, but if before she is slept with, okay, if he's going to give her away to her son, she can't be given as a concubine, is what it seems to say.
Yeah,
just to be given as a daughter, which protects the woman's right.
But right above it saying if you're selling your daughter into.
Yeah.
So he can get. He can't do that. He can't if he's giving her to his son. He can't do it that way.
No. This is actually for the poor person who sells their daughter as a slave woman. The 8 is from the perspective of the master.
Right. I get that. That's what I'm saying. So if he.
Which, by the way,
I see.
So 7 is actually a warning to poor people.
Right.
You don't expect while there is this strange new arrangement because it is new. That's a new concept to them. Oh wait, every 6 years I get to go free.
Right.
Okay. And actually, there's going to be laws about how they go. They can't go empty-handed.
Right.
It could be pretty cush. So like, well, maybe the solution is we'll just go around selling ourselves as slaves to people, and every 6 years
get some free stuff.
We'll get some free stuff. We'll head out, whatever. Well, the daughters don't go out like that. So fathers don't, which is a very strange scenario. But sell your sons before you sell your daughters could be one way to read it. It's a terrible position to be in. Or sell yourself, rather, with your daughters. That's another way to keep her intact. But if you sell her separate from you, she's not coming back.
Like that.
And it also, again, it seems to be different for the woman because it has to do with this kind of sexual procuring. This is a common practice. I mean, this is helpful at this point to say, what are the practices of people? What are the anthropological sexual practices at this time in this place? They are manifold. Pederasty is common,
right,
which the Torah is going to seek to stamp out, but it doesn't change the fact that it's common praxis. There's all having concubines, having prostitution. There's all kinds of problems that are just normal to them. That prostitution would be part of religion, is normal to them. That's who's receiving these laws.
Okay, so then in the same way on 11, it says if he doesn't give her food, clothing, and the right of cohabitation, she gets to leave, and she doesn't get any money.
Yeah, so she has rights. Even in this thing, she
doesn't get paid for that neglect. She just gets out.
She gets out. So watch this. Verse 10. Let's see. Im acheret yikachlo. So if after he takes her, So this is actually a costly setup. That's interesting. This setup is not just based on bread. If you just give this woman bread, she's free. She can leave you.
Right.
The word is actually se'era, which is meat. Suta, cover or clothing, essentially, and sexual intimacy. It's to be crouched or hunched up. She can go free. She doesn't get these 3 things. All 3 are.
So cohabitation is actual sexual intimacy.
Oh yeah.
Or the way it says it in Greek is her conjugal rights.
Yeah.
Well,
anata from ana. Ana can mean it's a word to be depressed or down, but it literally means to be crouched or down, which is the idea of like a sexual position.
She's either hiding in there somewhere.
No, she's not. Because it's her right. And verse 11 is really clear. Ve'im shalosh ele lo ya'aseh. If any of these 3, the 3 need to be done. Which is, in ancient times, not an easy. It's not going to be an easy thing an easy arrangement to keep going.
Right.
So you can actually imagine a lot of women just piecing out or switching or changing locations. It's not like the serfs in the medieval times in Russia or something.
Right.
You really need more infrastructure to have the kind of, rightly, there are hideous forms of slavery in ancient times, but the really grueling, massive, like even the massive grueling slavery you see in Egypt, you really need an empire to keep that kind of thing maintained.
Mm-hmm.
You still can have brutal slave masters on a small scale in ancient times, but it becomes really problematic. It's easy for the master to get sick. It's easy for.
Okay, so then that's a good. So then enforcing these are the priests. Or Moses, the judges?
This is why the word used at the very beginning is ve'ele hamishpatim. This is what these are the rulings the priests and the elders are to give when cases are brought to them. This is not go around and look for these cases.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
A lot of these, they already do this
Too
stuff.
many of
They're
those.
already doing it. They're already having these problems. They're already arranging themselves this way. And a lot of the stuff they're just dealing with themselves.
Right. Okay. Whoever strikes someone and he dies will surely be put to death. But if he did not lie in wait and it was an accident, I will appoint for you a place to which he may flee.
Stop. These are ideas that are going to be some of these ideas are kind of novel, okay, or different, and they highlight God's heart in some way. Either they're
You mean novel in comparison to the other cultures?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
So some of them are just peculiar, like, hey, Hebrews are a different thing,
Yeah.
okay. But some of them reflect God's heart for the weakest person, like the woman. As dark as that is, you're like, well, God, why don't you just set her free?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. These kinds of questions. It comes back to the hardness of the heart. It's a reflection of the hardness of the heart in Israel.
Too, in the condition of the place. So he's like, all right, I'll set her free. And then she gets eaten by a lion, or she doesn't have a place to eat, or she doesn't have a...
Sure, there's all kinds of
course.
complexity. But at least he has her in view. He has her in view within this context. Again, I'm not going to be browbeaten by people who want to make this, they want to lay this text onto modernity.
Right.
Say,
Yeah.
what a hideous person God is. I mean, it really does come down to, is God allowed to be friends with brutal ancient people? It really does come down, is he allowed, like, what does a relationship, a localized relationship between God and an ancient brutal people look like? What's the Torah?
Yeah.
Unless he goes around and acts like Pharaoh. Like, what it means to be Yahweh's slave is largely different than what it means to be Pharaoh's slave. He is not trying to rape their will and make them into automatons. They already have practices in place. He's going to start to shift and change those practices in varying degrees and varying ways. And by the way, it's very possible that a lot of these sundry laws come from the events that make their way to Moses, the difficult cases. So it is actually possible that some of these rulings are related to extant cases.
Well, I mean, okay, so on that topic, like smashing this sort of perspective on modernity, if Jesus is the fulfillment of the Torah, then you can say, this is the guy I was hoping you all to be, and obeying the instructions.
Yes.
So then we can see that he doesn't go around like smacking people and, well, you know, besides the zeal in the temple, but I mean like owning slaves or...
The question is, okay, all of these, they're already doing it.
Yeah.
Typically, God is going to say, you're already doing these practices. You can't take these practices you're already doing past this point.
Right. I that's what I mean. But I'm saying like to I don't know, I guess squelch the argument that whatever, if Jesus portrays what he intended for the obedient Israelite to look like, be like.
Yeah, if he's the intention. Yeah.
Then, and he obeys all of the Torah.
Yes.
It seems like most of those laws he doesn't have to obey because he doesn't have slaves.
Well, he exceeds them. Yeah, okay.
Right. So you see what I'm saying?
Okay, wait.
He has slaves now.
So at the time, here's the thing: the idea that, well, he's not a woman, and there are laws that are peculiar to women, and we don't feel like, well,
yeah.
Okay. So the Torah has obligations for people based on the actual localized context that people will find themselves in within the land of Israel. The very fact of the incarnation is he limited himself to one location. He was inside the womb of Mary and walked around. So the context he found himself in, he navigated it perfectly in regards to Torah. He also wasn't the son of Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he could mourn for the dead. The sons of Aaron can't mourn for the dead unless it's, or the priest can't mourn for the dead, particularly the high priest, but priests can't mourn for the dead unless it's their wife or their son or a daughter or a sister that never left and was raised in their household, this kind of thing. That's a very specific thing, but I'm giving you an example. The idea that he fulfilled it, that's a good point. It doesn't mean he did all the laws.
Right. Some of them don't apply.
Yeah.
But either way, it also shows that God can't have had this, tyrannical heart then, because the image that Jesus portrays is just like
Sure. Well, what's the core?
Genuinely.
So God gives these 10 house rules, and what does he immediately talk about? How do the sundry laws don't start in chapter 21. This week's parsha starts in 21. What came directly after the 10 commandments? What laws are given? What's the most important thing for Yahweh?
What do you mean? I don't understand.
What there were commands given after the 10 commandments are given in Exodus. Right after. Moses says a little spiel, and then the laws continue. This is not right after the 10 commandments. What commands are given right after the 10 commandments?
Oh, I don't remember. Altars?
Yep. Watch. He goes after the 10.
The idol making and stuff.
So, and the people stood at a distance, and Moses approached the very thick cloud where God was. And Yahweh said to Moses, thus you will say to the Israelites, you yourselves have seen that I've spoken to the heavens. This is a really important point. It's time to expand the 10. Does he start on moral, ethical property exchange? No. He says, you will not make alongside me gods of silver, gods of gold. Okay? An altar of earth. He starts telling them what temple should look like. The heart of the Torah is the first commandment. Okay? The very first commandment is the heart of all of the Torah, and it's what's going to change their lives. Verse, Lo yehiye lecha Elohim achrim al panai. Not there's going to be to you other gods on my face. You're not going to put other gods on my face. You're not bringing other gods into my presence. It's the heart of the Torah. I'm present. I'm locally present with you, and I'm not going to share you. The whole thrust of the Torah, it's the fount, it's the funnel, it's the gate to heaven. That one commandment. Right. The goal is to bring them to God and bring them to the temple. Whether you're a woman, whether you're a slave man, whether you're a wealthy elder or whatever as an Israelite, okay? The real place where the heart of the Torah begins to be fulfilled is in the temple. Right. Okay. These are laws for how people are to conduct themselves with each other and essentially love their neighbors themselves.
So he starts with so then the commands start with Yahweh's like, here's my first 4. And then they sort of elaborate and then get to the point where he's like, all right, here's how far you guys can go with all this other stuff that you're doing. Not really a big fan of he's not necessarily saying, I'm condoning what you guys are doing. He's saying, I'm not going to let you take it past this point. Well, so even with the striking somebody.
Well, this is, again, that thing that we saw with the slave woman is itself meditative. It's meditation on the command, don't commit adultery. Okay. Deuteronomy does this already in order. Deuteronomy goes, it's meditative. So the 10 is really all there is.
Because from the 10 you can elaborate all this other stuff?
Yeah, it's from the 10 that they're trying to, that they end up applying. It's like applying case law under the direction of anointing.
So then by the time it gets to the property right thing, you could really just say, all right, all of you just stop stealing.
Yeah, well, this is the problem is, what counts as stealing?
Right, so that's what I'm saying. So he's actually unpacking, because it's kind of like a kid to be like, you're like, all right, don't cross this line. And the kid's like, all right, what about here? What about here? What about here?
Kind of. It's not necessarily that. It's also, this is another way to say that it's more positive. Yours is negative. He's allowing priests, Moses as well, he's allowing Israelites to take part in the process of constructing how these laws are going to be kept in Israel.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It is under the direction of the Holy Spirit in Moses' sake. Okay. But it is also, Moses has freedom in Judges.
So he sets up parameters and they mete it out or something.
Yeah, and we have examples in the Torah. We're going to find examples where they don't know what to do.
Right.
But they do know what to do every time. Keep the first commandment. We don't know what to do with this Egyptian boy. We'll hold him up, and then we'll keep the first commandment. We'll go into God's face. We go to his presence and talk to him.
Oh, okay.
Right? We don't bring other gods before his face. We're seeking his presence.
All this other stuff.
Yeah. His voice is how we do this. Now it says this. It says after they figured out what to do with that Egyptian boy, he had an Egyptian father, okay? They wrote it down.
So then they know.
Case law is built up by, let's go to the tent and deal with these. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the bigger, I think there's a weird thing that people do with the text when they're like, why doesn't God get rid of slavery, or why doesn't he? Like, okay, so what you're saying about these people is that if God showed it to you right now, and told you all the things you had to stop and all the things you had to start, you could be that obedient unto perfection.
Mhm.
And if you couldn't, why do you put that same judgment on other people?
Yeah.
Like, aren't we all just children? I mean, he says that in Deuteronomy when he says, the very children that you're trying to save who don't know their left from their right, the good or the bad.
Yeah.
Those are the people I'm going to take. Well, you have to train people in good and bad. People don't just perfectly know good and bad the moment you tell them.
Yeah. And also we have to remember it's still true. It's true today, but the mechanism is radically shifted through Messiah, but it's still true today. Yahweh is actually only changing the human landscape one relationship at a time still.
Yeah.
Right.
So think about that at this stage. There's all these people there, but it's Moshe and Yahweh.
Right.
And to a degree Aaron, and to a degree Joshua son of Nun. Like they get to be in his presence. And to a degree then the 72 when it expands.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of stops there. The priests get a little bit more access. Okay. This is it really is incredibly limited. The real way that an Israelite expresses relational connection before Yahweh is in the temple with meals, eating with him, drawing close. They would pray to face the temple. There's a deep longing to make a connection with God.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the most enviable authoritative positions are the ones that are the most authoritative positions in Israel, the ones that have the greatest proximity to sacred space.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it shows you this arrangement it's a complicated beast. And what I love about it is God's not ashamed of them. God's not ashamed of them. We're a joke. In 300 years, people will look back on the ways that we thought and did certain things, and they'll say you know how
archaic and
you know how people are like we laugh when we think about the medieval doctor who tries to bleed people out to heal to get to get their shit in order. You know the mysterious tumors
in your blood. You should do cocaine about it.
Yeah. Like we laugh at that. We will be the laughing stock. In 300 years. The question is this: if God is going to choose a perfect people to come and reveal Himself to, should He come to us? If we're going to be a laughing stock, well, no, let's wait. Should He come to that?
Yeah, I mean, He would just never pick.
There would be no
one to select that fits the bill.
And I also like the humility. I like the humility of God that He would choose this ancient people. That to a degree, God's. I'm telling you, man. You want to be in my life? You better be prepared to have a relationship with Gideon.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't want to have a relationship with Gideon? You don't want to have a relationship with me.
Right.
And what did Yeshua say to the smart-ass Sadducees? Well, why is God called? God's the God. Your party line. God's not the God of the dead, right? Like the Psalms say. They just said God's not the God of the dead. He's the God of the living. Why does He call Himself the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob?
Yeah.
Because they're still with Him.
Right.
So this is their extended story. Like our lives are messy, and we're an extension of this messiness.
Yeah.
It isn't pretty. It is. You can weep over it. You absolutely can weep over some of these things. You can weep over these situations, but you better do it you better not imagine them in their like Subaru built with love, RAV4 in a 3-story house in a suburb.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not where they are.
Right.
All right. So.
But if you did not lie in wait and it was an accident, I will point for you a place to which you may flee. So he's talking about that.
Yes, what do
you call those? Cities of refuge.
Mm-hmm. They're going to be cities of refuge. They're correlated to the priests can't have property. The priests are going to have a peculiar relationship to these cities of refuge. They're going to be like kind of holy sites to a degree.
Okay. But if a man schemes against his neighbor to kill him by treachery, you will take him from my altar to die. Which means he's already assuming you brought him here at this case.
Okay, that's a good point. So it's assuming something.
Okay.
It's connected to the altar. It's possible that the case itself was brought to the altar. It's also possible he is clinging to sacred space because you can't shed blood in sacred space. This actually happens.
Right, with who does that?
Solomon has to command he has to tell his
go in and
kill him. Is it Joab or something? I think it's
Joab. Joab's not the one killed.
Joab is one of the ones that Solomon has killed, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, really? I thought it was somebody with an A.
I thought it was Joab. There is somebody else who does it, but I think Joab actually gets killed on the horns of the altar.
Oh, interesting.
I can't remember the details. We should go look. But yes, it does happen. So they would go to sacred space because you're not supposed to shed blood in sacred space.
Wow,
Wow,
didn't
so-
he have to tell Ben and I had to go in and take him away from the altar and kill him?
Yeah, I don't know if it was Benaniah because I know it was it was his chief. It was Solomon's chief.
I think it was Ben.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Do fact check. But yes, this happens, and it's like it seems to be a common enough tactic.
Yeah.
Whoever. Okay. Yeah. So take him from my altar to die. 15. Which is interesting. Either the case was heard at the altar or he's clinging to it, and in both cases, take him away to die.
And whoever strikes his father or his mother will surely be put to death.
Yep.
And whoever kidnaps someone and sells him, or he is found in his possession, he will surely be put to death.
Yep. Now this is peculiar to. I don't know if it's peculiar. It says 1:16. Vagonev Ish. It says Ish. I don't know if it's peculiar to Israelites, kidnapping Israelites, or kidnapping anyone. I'd say because it should be anyone. But Israelites are going to have a peculiar take on kidnapping because of Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, which means his brothers would have been put to death for their crime. It's a capital offense. So kidnapping is actually a pretty common ancient tactic.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to take people. They don't have any infrastructure, so if you take people far enough, you can sell them. There's no way they ever get back. Shit, man. Somebody goes on a journey for a month, for a moon, and it's terrifying. You may never see them ever again. They could die very easily, but sometimes they could just never get back.
Yep. Wild animal, brigands,
Slavery,
a random cold or flu.
conscription, all kinds of stuff. Weird stuff. Okay.
Um,
16.
and whoever, we did kidnaps, and one who curses his father or his mother will surely be put to death.
Steals his brother.
And if men quarrel and a man strikes his neighbor with a stone or with a fist and he does not die, but he is confined to bed, if he stands and walks out in the outside on his staff, the striker will be unpunished. And he will only pay for his inactivity toward his full recovery.
Now, this is an interesting law.
Pay for the unemployment of the person that
Right.
Yeah.
You put him out of work for however many. That if a man strikes his male slave or his female slave with the rod and he dies under his hand, he will surely be avenged.
By the way, this word is his Shabbat. His Shevet. It's related to the word for Shabbat. It's the idea of his ceasing.
Yeah.
You'll pay for his ceasing. You'll give him his ceasing. Pay for him. Another way to read it is you'll pay for his rest time, or you'll pay for his Shabbat. Sorry, 20. We're in some dark territory here.
Yeah, so if you kill your slave, the slave will be avenged. Yet if he survives a day or 2 days, he will not be avenged, because he is his money. So wait, what if he dies? So if he dies after 2 days?
Achim yomo yomar. Now they can't do this to an Israelite. This is for any slave. This is any slave. It appears to be any slave, foreigner or Israelite. You're going to see in Leviticus and other places. I don't know if it goes into it in this chapter, but in Leviticus you can't treat Israelite slaves harshly.
Yep.
So they have a different status in the system. But even in this system, any slave that dies, you can kill the person who kills the slave. Now, this is different from other places, even sophisticated places like Rome. Mm-hmm. Go and read about how patriarchy works within free people households. In Rome, among free Roman citizens, if the son dishonors the father in public, does something like this, the father has the right to kill his son without a trial. And you see how nutso Romans are about everybody getting a trial. Okay. Even in that kind of culture, you still have this kind of strange case. But the slaves, they'll be avenged. How will they be avenged? Yeah, this is heavy. I don't know. The eyes there. I don't know. Craig is giving me the eyes. I don't know if the eyes are for what we've said. All that we've said. Adonijah
goes and grabs the horns of the altar.
What happens to Yoav? Does he just get killed? 3 people have to be annexed or dealt with carefully by a priest.
It's in First Kings.
It's like a bad joke. A priest, a military commander, and usurper. But Craig, I don't know if the eyes are for everything we've discussed, it's dark. This is really dark. But again, go watch The Walking Dead.
Right.
Go read the Book of Judges.
Yeah. So okay, and if men fight and they injure a pregnant,
But sorry, that's actually worth saying. He'll be avenged. 20
how? So yeah, how?
Yenakaim. No come, Yenakaim. By blood, it seems like a blood avenger. That's also by the way.
So slaves have blood avengers.
Yeah, it would seem
Family.
so.
Yeah,
Same
it's
idea?
family. Everyone has a blood avenger if you have family.
Sure. They're allowed to be avenged. So that would mean, which is a very interesting law for
Israel.
ancient people, you can't just pay them money. If they're to be avenged, there's this weird role called the blood avenger. That is not specified or stipulated in the Torah. The Torah never says, be a blood avenger.
Right.
This is how you blood avenge. It just says, when the blood avenger comes, they can do this, they can't do that.
Right.
It's maybe like the rules in the game of Werewolf. You don't know.
Right.
You know.
So he adds on restrictions because there are blood avengers in Israel.
Oh my God! Among ancient Semitic people, this is to this day. I have a brother in Christ who discipled me, and Muslims in India. He was, my friend was beaten up by some Hindu extremists, but he was a disciple, a Christian who was evangelizing Muslims. His family lived among Muslims, and they gained respect, and they lived among them. The Muslims approached my brother in Christ and said, "Hey, what's going on? You should let us know, and we'll go into the village and we'll kill every male in the village. Not, we'll find the people who beat you up and exact justice. We'll kill every male in the village." The Torah outlaws this kind of behavior. And this is actually way more common in ancient times. There's a wonderful, humans typically arrange themselves in a way that's very, prior to solving the food problem, infrastructure, all these problems, we'll just call it the survival problem. Prior to solving the multifaceted survival problem, humans are prone to more bellicose behavior, more war-oriented behavior, and they're very brutal.
You're right. It was Joab too.
Joab too, right?
Yeah, Adonijah grabbed it, then he tried to reason through Bathsheba.
Okay.
And then when he did that, Solomon killed him. And then when Joab found out that he was killed and Abiathar was exiled,
Yes.
he went and grabbed the horn of the altar. And Benaniah came and killed him too.
Okay. It was Benaniah and Joab. Great. Okay.
Yay.
Benaniah lived that long. All right. He lived past.
Dude,
Yeah,
he
no.
lives forever.
Okay.
Beast.
All right. So, yes, we have, and yeah, they do have blood avengers, and they would be restricted. It would be a concept that a blood avenger would say, "I'm gonna to minimize harm to my own property. I'll come with multiple men because you might be guarded, and I'll just kill everything that breathes in this tent."
Yeah.
This is like really, really dark reprisals, but that's more common. So there's a restriction on it.
So
These
there
are
are
the people you're dealing with.
All right, so the blood avenger, I was going to ask that too. The blood avenger is expecting some fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Which is why you have cities of refuge where people can flee.
and they can't do anything there.
What?
So a blood avenger can't. If
They
they're in the
can't.
city,
A blood avenger-
well, if they meet the priest's requirements.
That's right. If the priest judges this issue and they are taken into the city of refuge, they can't be harmed there. If they're guilty of blood, they'll be murdered. Or we would use a different word in English, but Hebrew it's the same. It's killed. They'll be killed instead of killing, but they'll be executed. Would be
Okay.
the word in English to nicify it.
Okay.
Okay, so
And if men fight and they injure a pregnant woman, and their
God,
children
that's
go out and there is not serious injury, he will surely be fined as the woman's husband demands concerning him, and as the judges determine.
okay, so the man will make demands. The judges will make a determination. The word there for Yihye Asun Anosh. Okay, that's interesting. Interesting.
And this is the I.
Huh?
And if there is serious injury, you will give life in place of life,
Yes.
eye in place of eye, tooth in place of tooth,
Yes.
hand in place of hand, foot in place of foot.
Doesn't that sound so brutal? Eye for eye and tooth for tooth. It is not brutal. Again, this scenario that I've just described. You gouge my eye
Right.
out.
I'm going to go kill your kids.
Yeah.
So it says, okay, well, I didn't kill your kid, so you can only take my eye.
Sure. You broke my bone. I'm gonna burn your field down.
Right.
Okay.
So that
which
your
is
family
way
starves.
worse. Which is way worse. So the eye for eye, tooth for tooth, literally is confining an ancient people to exactitude with reprisals. And here's the thing:
confining them is a good way to word that.
Yeah,
It's like justice or the judgment of revenge or something.
Verse 22. I want to see this. This is interesting because it says in verse 22. Yelda velo yihye asun. No, yeah, it's interesting because I don't see the word judges. I just see the people assessing, those assessing. So there would be judges doing it, but the noun shofet's not specified. It's actually a verb. The ones doing the assessing. So you have, in other words, I'm just saying this, verse 22, because the judges are present, they're brought there because they're brought up specifically because they need to make an analysis and a determination, but it's very possible they're behind the scenes in every single one of these instances. And so a next example is 23. They're going to be involved in these scenarios as well. And the other piece is this. It doesn't say you gouged an eye. Now you must gouge the other eye. That's not what eye for eye means. It means you can go no further.
It's the maximum penalty.
That's exactly right. The maximum that can be exacted is the eye for an eye. Not both eyes. Not his hands. Not his tongue. Not there's
So this is the same thing for if a son strikes his mother or father. The most you can do is kill him.
See, this is what I'm saying. So then, on that, if there's serious injury, you will give life in place of life. So that language is like, is it the will may thing?
Okay.
You may give life in place of life.
That is a good point. Part of life is going to be treated differently. Certain capital offenses will be treated differently, partly because of the image of God. So if you shed the blood of an imager, your blood will be shed. That's in the Torah. That's in Genesis 8. If you commit adultery, you are going to be put to death.
Because then it does sound like you're saying if you take a knife, you're getting your eye taken. So
that's the most that can happen. So
yeah,
but the you will give life in place of life doesn't really reflect that's the most. Unless that phrase will is you may give life in place of life.
Verse 20. Yeah. So verse 20. The imasun yehiyeh. Well, no. I mean the phrase is it's future tense. So it's the idea. Here's what you're going to be doing. Like it's.
So then that seems command. That seems like a command. If there is serious. So is he saying for non-serious injury, that's the most you can do? Because if there's serious injury, it seems like there's a command. Give life in place of life.
Yeah, no, it just says when you give. So the idea then is what you're assuming, give. You're assuming that give is this positive mandate. You must. You're assuming the word must.
Well, you will is the must that I'm.
Will is just future tense.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's not a command. It's saying you're going to end up doing this regardless.
And think about it with the ones assessing or judging when it's given, a judgment's given. When it's given, okay, in the instance of it's giving, you will give this.
So if you find yourself here, this is the maximum you can give.
Well, part of what they have to sort out are what are the kinds of crimes that you can give a reparation for in monetary means versus life means. Mm-hmm. Because not everything that you do to someone can be paid with money. You see, one of the things that happens if you make every crime something where you just go, oh, well, there's a fine for that. Mm-hmm. Well, who gets to commit all the sins?
Yeah, the rich people.
Whoever has the most money. You just commit whatever sin you want to because you've got the money for it. There are some things that if they happen, money is not an option for paying things back.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. And just as a quick little thing, for those of you who want to know some Greek, the word ante is what's used for reparation. So if you've ever heard the phrase ante up, like pay what you owe, that's the word used in Greek is your ante, what you owe.
Okay.
We're well past an hour. Do we want to pick up with? We want to keep going. There's a lot of sundry laws.
We can pick up next time.
Why don't we?
There's not really we can go to 36, I guess.
It's up
we
to
can
you.
go to 22. I'm down with that.
Well, okay. I think Ellie and Cam are going to be here soon. But let's see.
We can go.
You said they're outside.
It's also third watch.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's why Ellie and Cam are coming. All right. Well, then let's at least go to this before the ox.
All right.
Yeah. 26, 27.
And if a man strikes the eye of his male slave or the eye of his female slave and destroys it, he shall release him as free in place of his eye.
Mm-hmm.
And if he causes the tooth of his male slave or the tooth of his female slave to fall out, he will release him as free in place of his tooth.
Yeah.
So that's your tooth of your eye is worth your freedom.
Sure.
Or maybe that just shows how much more he weighs freedom, I guess.
And again, this is what if you're a slave here's a really weird question. What if you've said you have your ear pierced? And your master, these are the problems this is why the Talmud exists. Okay, so we'll take this for example. What if the man loves his master, but then his master loses his wife,
Temper,
and then he goes through a serious depression, and he responds to the depression by becoming a hardened man, and then he starts hitting, one of the servants' kids, and the servant tries to step in, and he beats the shit out of the servant in a rage and knocks his tooth out, but his ear is pierced. Does he belong to the master? Or can he go free? We don't know. At least we don't know how they would resolve it. We have no idea how they would resolve it.
Oh.
So
because the guy pierced his ears so he could stay with his kids.
The guy pierced his ears so he could be the master's slave forever.
Right. But I'm saying in the case where he did it because he had a wife and children given by the master.
Sure.
Would they then say, you can go because your tooth got knocked out, but their teeth didn't get knocked out, so they're going to stay.
Now, here's an interesting thing, too, is does this apply? You could ask questions about this endlessly. Does this apply only to Israelite slaves, and does it just make their 6 years lessen? Does it apply to all slaves? So that
interesting.
Yeah,
so it says male slave. It doesn't say Hebrew.
Sure. So there's a lot of different ways to try to make sense out of these texts. It is worth trying to read it and say, this was in this arrangement. I just want to know what God touched. He touched the Temple Mount, and he touched Moses. Okay. All right. Why don't you close this in prayer?
Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for your Torah. Thank you for your law. Thank you for your humility. Thank you for your willingness to condescend to a brutal people. Because I feel like that definition fits at any timeline. Yeshua, we are brutal in our sin. We were enemies to you before you found us. So even though we did not know you and did not love you, you are sanctifying us. You're really bringing salvation to us. I praise you for that, Lord. Thank you for this. I pray that we would understand you. I pray that we would, in this, recognize, in the Torah and in these sort of laws, we would recognize your willingness to give the rod, your willingness to set restrictions.
Yes, for sure.
And also just keep in mind that, that Jesus fulfilled these things, that you, Yeshua, fulfilled. He fulfilled the heart of the law. And you were not a murderer. You were not a slanderer. You were not a thief. I just praise you for that, Yeshua. I praise you for that. I pray that we would look at those two things simultaneously. I pray that these words and this understanding would rest in our mind, rest in our heart, that we would learn about you and then learn about the people then, and not look back on the Israelites with some form of judgment, as though we could look down on anything that they did, but look back on them and see a people whom you prize, seeing the people whom even in their weak state, evil state, you love them, and you made promises to them that you upheld, Lord. So you honored your end of the deal. So thank you for that, Jesus. I pray that your will be done. I pray that we meditate on your law day and night.
Please, Yeshua.
And that you teach us about your heart and your character, Lord. Thank you, Yeshua. I ask all these things in the power of your name. So be it.
Amen. Thank you, Yeshua. All right. Peace.